welcome to UMBC. We're so pleased that you've joined us for the UMBC Department of Education's annual Equity and Excellence Lecture. My name is Dr. Kendall Nash, and I'm the Director of the Early Childhood Education Program here at UMBC. Throughout tonight's event, we invite you to post on Twitter at #UMBC Education. In this room, we have hundreds of people who understand that our education system, from kindergarten through college, is not working for many students. You understand that we need to develop racial literacy and center multicultural, multilingual, and justice pedagogies in our teaching and learning. We need to turn away from, as Toni Morrison says, the white gaze of middle-class expectations to facilitate critiques about structural barriers to equitable education. Thank you all for being here. Before we begin, I would like to personally thank Dean Casper, the Dean of CAS, and the Education Department Chair, John Singer, for their support of this event. Many thanks to Drs. Keisha Allen, Cheryl North, and Linda Oliva, who along with myself have worked since the summer to plan this day. Major shout outs to Tiffany Shorter, Marta Sirius, Patty McGonigal, Nikki Monchowski, and the many graduate assistants who did an inordinate amount of work in making this happen. I would like to thank the Godolsky family, who provided funding and scholarships for events like this. And I would like to thank the Sherman family, who have generously provided support for our students who are preparing to teach culturally and linguistically diverse students in STEM and other fields through the Sherman STEM Scholars Program. And finally, I would like to thank President Freeman Grabowski. The culture of creating justice with actions towards equity, diversity, and inclusion comes from the top down at UMBC. Because tonight is only the start of the conversation, I would like to invite you all to a collegial conversation, a follow-up to this conversation we're starting tonight. That will be on February 25th from 5 to 7 p.m. More details later. We'll send an invitation to all of you. Finally, I'd like to thank Keisha Allen and Kim Feldman for all the work that they have done to make this event coherent and focused on what we are really all here for, you. They worked hard to make sure our speaker tonight, Dr. Yolanda Seeley Ruiz, spent time with Baltimore youth who may be interested in pursuing teaching. Let's all give a round of applause to those young people. Thank you. And without further ado, Dr. Keisha Allen will introduce tonight's speaker, Dr. Yolanda Seeley Ruiz.
Good evening. The Equity and Excellence Lecture was created to engage pre-service teachers, educators, and community members in critical conversations that support the dispositions needed to work towards educational equity in the Baltimore region and beyond. The past 2 years, we've invited speakers who've asked us to consider how we can better recognize and uplift the brilliance of Black boys and commit to centering the diasporic knowledge and ways of being of Black people in our pedagogy with Black children. This year, I'm honored to introduce Dr. Yolanda Seeley Ruiz, an associate professor of English education at Teachers College at Columbia University in New York. I originally met Dr. Seeley Ruiz during one of my research methods courses at Teachers College. And after our class, she emailed me to invite me to come and speak with her about my research interests and my experiences at the university. What stood out to me in that first meeting is that before I said anything about my classes and my research interests, she asked me if I would like to have a cup of tea. It's that level of service, care, and attention that she extends to everyone. With Dr. Seeley Ruiz, you feel seen, whether you've known her for a few minutes, as some people may have experienced with her today, interacting with her today, or if you've known her for 10 years. It is because of that way of being that in 2018 she was awarded the Revolutionary Mentor Award by the Critical Educators for Social Justice Special Interest Group of the American Educational Research Association. This award recognizes a scholar who has made distinguished contributions in the mentoring of pre-K through 12 students, undergraduates and graduate students, and junior scholars as a means of helping to develop critical social justice scholars, educators, and activists. The spirit she brought to our interaction in her office that day is the same she brings to her teaching, research, and scholarship. Dr. Celie Ruiz has 2 co-edited books, Gumbo for the Soul, Liberating Memoirs and Stories to Inspire Females of Color, and that was published in 2017, and Teacher Education in the Black Community, Implications for Equity, Access, and Achievement, which was published in 2014. And then she is also the author of the soon-to-be-released Love from the Vortex and Other Poems, a volume of poetry about self-love and the subsequent love of others that can stem from first loving yourself. She's the founder of the Racial Literacy Roundtable Series, where participants engage with doctoral students and scholars from across the country to examine issues of race, class, privilege, and access. It brings me great joy to introduce to you Lala from the Bronx, aka Dr. Yolanda Celie Ruiz.
How do you not come on stage after an introduction like that and not want to cry? I am so grateful to be here. Please know that. Thank you for having me. I need to gather myself for a moment. Okay, the moment is done. I use humor too. And I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I will say my thank yous as we move forward. I want to begin by acknowledging that we are on stolen land. That here, at this specific address, we are on the land of the Piscataway peoples. And I would like for us to take a moment of silence to remember the indigenous brothers and sisters who were here long before we were thought. Thank you. What land acknowledgement does is it invites us to have honest conversations about where we are, about who we are, and about what has happened before us. And so thank you for engaging with that. I want to tell you that I'm usually an extemporaneous speaker, but this is such a rich and beautiful opportunity to share work with you that I wrote some notes. So it would be between reading some notes that I spent some time pulling together, but also just sort of coming off of the cuff. And if jokes come, just humor me and laugh as though they were sort of funny. I want to bring my student into the room with me, RW, who said that in order to do this work, we have to invite others along. And so with that, I would like to thank the awesome tech team of Corey, Kevin, and Brad. You are awesome. Thank you for making sure that everything is going off without a hitch. I would like to thank Patty McGonigal, Tiffany Shorter, John Singer, the members of the Equity Excellence Lecture Committee, Cheryl North, Linda Oliva, Kendall Turner Nash, who gave a beautiful introduction, and last but not least, Keisha McIntosh Allen. It'll be difficult for me to say something without getting emotional with Keisha. I would just say this, that I love her and I respect her deeply. I am grateful that I met her many years ago. She has helped to change how I teach and how I mentor, and my gratitude runs deep. So thank you, Keisha. What is extremely crucial about racial literacy is that it is a skill that must be practiced. And in that practice, that indicates that there is action that comes along with it. And as we practice racial literacy, it is crucial, as my student told us, part of doing the work is getting others to do the work as well, that once we start on the journey, it is important that we hold others accountable along their own journey. Ancestor Queen Toni Morrison, I'd like to bring her in the room. When I travel around to speak to different places, there are usually two people that always come with me. One is Uncle Jimmy, James Baldwin, and Toni Morrison. Before I get to a beautiful quote from Toni, I just want to say quickly that in my research and work with administrators and teachers and aspiring teachers and students, I find that in order to step away from surface level diversity, which is the appearance of diverse perspectives, representation in the community, that it is important that we move toward racial literacy development. And this can be achieved, I'm arguing, through sustained self-exploration and probing. Personalizing race and recognizing how race and how individuals perpetuate racism can be the foundation to help create within schools an ethos of where honest conversations about the way students experience race can occur. A natural progression toward racial literacy is the deliberate development of a culturally responsive educational approach in the classroom. Expensively kept, economically unsound, a spurious and useful political asset in election campaigns. Racism is as healthy today as it was during Enlightenment. It seems that it has the ability to go far beyond economy, beyond the sequestering of classes from one another, and has assumed a metaphorical life, so completely embedded in daily discourse that it is perhaps more necessary and more on display today than ever before. That was Queen Toni Morrison in her book, Playing in the Dark, Whiteness and the Literary Imagination. Uncle Jimmy told us that not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed unless it is faced. And so what exactly do we need to face? What exactly do we need to talk about? I want to bring my sister friend Bettina Love into the room with us. And if you've not read Bettina's book, We Want to Do More Than Survive, Abolitionist Teaching and the Pursuit of Educational Freedom, I encourage you and I invite you to get a copy of this book. What Dr. Love tells us in the pages of her book is that a good number of my students, she's talking about growing up and teaching in Rochester. She said a good number of my students came from poor working class families. These parents went to work every day at the bottom of the US wage distribution. They worked simply at best to survive. The reality is that our political economy is structured to create poverty and inequality. Schools reflect our political economy. The fact that schools are funded by local property taxes ensures that students who live in poor communities receive an education that will maintain and in fact widen the gap between the uber rich, the rapidly shrinking middle class, the working poor, and the poor. This system renders schools ineffective in providing poor students any type of real social mobility. Schools in higher income districts or rich enclaves are well-resourced, have high-quality teachers, and have low teacher turnover. I think we know this, right? If any of us have taken a sociology class, and for those of you who are sociologists in the room, you know this very intimately. But it's important to remind us of the structure and the systems that we are operating under. And I think Bettina Love, Dr. Love, cogently pulls that together to help to remind us what it is that we're working against when we say that we are taking on the role of a teacher or a teacher educator. Bettina also shared that anti-racist teaching is not just about acknowledging that racism exists, but about consciously committing to the struggle of fighting for racial justice. So the question is, what skin do you have in the game? What do you have to lose? What are you afraid of? So in understanding the difference, as Bettina breaks out in the book, between an ally and a co-conspirator understands that to fight for racial justice, to fight for equity in schools, means that I would have to put myself on the line. Myself could be my job at any moment. It can mean the loss of friendships. It could mean the dissolution of relationships, partnerships, and certainly, as we look in history, it could mean the loss of life. And so it's fundamental to abolitionist teaching, this way of thinking. Anti-racist educators seek to understand the everyday experiences of dark people living, enduring, and resisting white supremacy and white rage. And so then the question becomes, are you a teacher? Are you an abolitionist teacher? Are you an ally? You know the language, you know to show up to meetings. Or are you a co-conspirator that you understand what skin you have in the game in this mission toward equity? And so my argument is that racial literacy and this idea of what I'm calling archaeology of the self is the deep excavation that has to happen, particularly for teachers and those of us who have chosen to serve in education. This happened about 4 months ago. And I want to remind us the fierce anti-Blackness that rages on in our society. Policies that blame and punish the poor for their condition. And the fact that we are seemingly standing by and watching Latinx children of immigrant experiences being separated from their families, locked in cages. That's still happening, even when the news doesn't cover it. Parents and children dying to attain what others were offered so freely. Are we really talking about this in our classes? Are we really talking about this in our society? Are we really sad and angry enough, right, to push us toward change? And to remind us that we just finished wrapping up commemorating 400 years of inequality. So particularly as those of us who are teachers, we are 400 years into the project of inequality, into the project of inhumanity. So we have to understand what it is that we are working against. This is not, we're not talking about from 1964 with the Civil Rights, the Voting Act. We're talking 400 years. In fact, 1607 was the year that marked enslavement in British colonies. In 1619, we understand in this history is the arrival of the first enslaved Africans to Jamestown, Virginia. So August 1619 and August 2019 wrapped up 400 years of this project of inequality. These are, I want to share this with you because they're available for you. This is an example of a 4 by 20 foot, what do we call it? Not a banner. Well, we call it a timeline experience. And so this is one panel. That's the word I'm looking for. This is one panel, and there's a second panel. So you'll see it starts with 1607. If you look at the second panel, it ends with the Charlottesville incident in 2017. And I want to share with you how I've taken up this work that I'm doing by working with one of my doctoral students, I almost called him doctor, it's coming, Angel Acosta, and this is work that we're doing at Teachers College and work that we're doing as professional development within schools, inviting people into reckoning with this history of both degradation, but also resistance and resilience. And we do this by walking folks through the 400 years. And Angel has created this 400 years, contemplating 400 years of inequality. What does it really mean to reckon with the fact that 400 years ago, some folks thought about an inequality project that we would be reckoning with today? What does it mean to face that history? And so why develop racial literacy? This is the invitation that I am extending to all of you, that I say that racial literacy, individuals who develop this are able to engage in the necessary personal reflection about their racial beliefs, their practices, and they're able to teach their students to do the same. And I'm talking about doing this with our younger babies at the K level and our babies all the way up to the 12th grade, and certainly in teacher education courses. Racial literacy in schools includes the ability to read, to discuss, and to write about situations that include racial inequity and racial bias as part of the norm of the schooling process. And so I'm thankful for the work of LaGarrett King as he uses his pen as a sword to cut away any doubt that racial literacy should be centered in social studies classrooms. I am thankful for the clear and precise way that Dr. Terry Epstein and Conra Giss nails the importance of teachers in my hometown of New York City and needing to develop their racial literacy as they build on their culturally responsive teaching skills and in their humanity and histories classroom. I'm also thankful for the work of Frances Twine, Allison Skerritt, Rebecca Rogers, Melissa Mosley, Perry Green, Anthony and Kefferlin Brown, longtime scholars of racial literacy. And I'm grateful for the newest scholars as well. Christina Villarin, William L. Smith, Amanda Vickery, and Genevieve Caffrey and Ryan Crowley. And I'm grateful to all of you who have come here, I hope, with an open mind and open hearts to consider what racial literacy can do, not just for your teaching, but also how you move in society and interact with others. I am grateful to colleagues who have taken up this important work. I'm grateful to you, Dr. Keisha, for the work that you do here with your colleagues in trying to push forward social justice and a critical consciousness among teachers. And I'm grateful for my homies in racial literacy. These are my racial literacy guides. Bell Hooks, because she is a genius. Brother Malcolm, because anytime I get a little bit fearful of doing this work, I think about Brother Malcolm. So a picture of him hangs in my office. And there are also sisters that inspire me, but Brother Malcolm really pushes me forward. Howard Stevenson, the brother of Brian Stevenson. Howard Stevenson is a professor at UPenn, and he looks at racial literacy from a psychological standpoint, what it does to both the person that's perpetuating the racist act and the person on the receiving end of the racist act. Uncle Jimmy, because he's Uncle Jimmy. Toni Morrison, enough said. And Thurgood Marshall, because I am always wondering what it must have been like for him to be the only African-American man on the bench at the time of Brown versus Board of Education. And that case, which is an infamous case, is all that we have, but it is so imperfect. Because in fact, what Brown versus Board of Education has done, or did, and Lonnie Lanier explores this in her article that I'll talk about in a few moments, it really marginalized Black students and created a tracking system. It really solidified white students being on the bottom rung of the educational ladder. And so it really was a project that helped the white elite and not so much opened up integration, which is the story that we often tell. And so my racial literacy guides, Lonnie Lanier in particular, she is considered, in my mind, the godmother of racial literacy. And with her article, 2004 article in the American Journal of, the Journal of American History, the article is, I should know it by heart, From Racial Liberalism to Racial Literacy, Brown versus Board of Education and the Interest Divergence Dilemma. And you may have heard the term entrance convergence. For those of you who are critical race scholars or interested in that area, that comes out of the work of Derek Bell. And so in her brilliance, in this article, she cogently argues that as a society, we must move beyond symbolic models of racial progress, like Brown versus Board of Education, for example. We have to move towards becoming more racially literate in our society. And in agreement with Lanier, scholars of racial literacy like myself suggest that as a society, we must move away from this symbolic political action to a deeper, more nuanced understanding of how deeply embedded the concept of race is in our society, how it maintains the status quo of racial hierarchy, and how it impacts every aspect of our lived experiences. So this depth that I'm exploring and bearing witness to with students and faculty I work with has to come from a deep excavation. So I want to tell you that it's very difficult for me to ask people to do things that I won't do myself. And so as an untenured professor at TC, I'm still teaching at the high school level, and I was, the first summer, I was there, I taught a course, a diversity course, and the racial literacy roundtables grew out of the failure of that course. I felt that at the end of it, my students just didn't get what I was trying to do. And so what I decided to do is to go to the diversity office and get some money for pizza, for refreshments, and I thought I would invite my class to come and let's continue the conversation. Because of that class, I did not teach in the summer for about 9 years. That's how traumatic it was for me. I felt 6 weeks was not enough, and it's a much longer story that I've written about, but the racial literacy roundtables came as a result of this. This particular poster, I'm so excited to share with you. This is Dr. Cesar Cruz, who in LA has started the Homies Empowerment. It's like a foundation, and these are former gang members who are studying to become teachers. And so it's the first time at TC that we burned sage. I was so grateful the alarms didn't go off. Please. It was the first time, I think collectively, that about 90 people wrote letters to ancestors and read the letters to ancestors. So this was a very pivotal moment for me in the idea of what racial literacy can do in a space like an elite institution of Teachers College. So I want to fast forward. I want to say that since the roundtables, there are performances and lectures and healing circles, and I have a wonderful dream of having a national conference, which I invite all of you to in 2021. And this is happening March 3rd, so if you're going to be in New York, mark your calendars. This is the Spring 2020 Racial Literacy Lecture Series, which is all performance-based. It is a one-man show. Jeffrey Brown, who takes on the intersection of foster care and education. So that's happening March 3rd in Cowan Auditorium. And my class goes to this. It's really for my class, but it's open to the Teachers College and the Columbia University community. So, what are these concepts, excuse me, of racial literacy that I'm talking about? Where my head is always swimming. So there's this idea of racial literacy, historical literacy, critical humility, critical reflection, and archaeology of the self. So I'm going to do my best, as Dr. Keisha is keeping me honest on time. This is the framework that I'm working with. And I'll be honest with you that I am still learning what the archaeology of the self is, even as I write articles and as I'm writing this book with my colleague. So it is not exactly like Maslow's pyramid, because Maslow believes that a child must engage in these particular pillars in order to have optimal teaching environment, optimal learning environment. I understand that humility and reflection and historical literacy and so forth, it vacillates for folks. But what is a strong foundation for me that I want to argue cannot change, the foundation has to be love. There has to be a critical love and a profound respect for the communities that we are serving. So that doesn't shift for me. The penultimate archaeology of the self is the space that I've been living in now. So archaeology of the self does not exist as a term in education. I was talking earlier to Francis. Francis, are you here? Francis, who is a Foucauldian scholar. The closest thing in education is Michel Foucault's archaeology of knowledge. And so in doing this literature review, I'm looking at mindfulness, I'm looking at Foucault, I'm looking at psychology, and trying to bring in this idea of the archaeology of the self into education, which basically is, and I'm going to show a quick video, is the deep excavation and exploration of beliefs, of biases, and ideas that shape how we engage with our work. So what I'd like to do for the next few minutes that I have is to flip through very quickly some of these concepts, pausing at archaeology of the self, and let's see where it takes us. So a little bit about racial literacy. Alison Skerritt, my colleague, said that racial literacy has been defined as an understanding of the powerful and complex ways in which race influences the social, the economic, the political, and educational experiences of individuals and groups. Teachers' development of racial literacy then, which involves a discernment of the structural, political, and economic circumstances or antecedents that underlie racism and disadvantage. And so for those of us, English is my content area, who teach English or art or math, we cannot say that we're just focused on teaching that content. What Alison is saying is that there must be a deep, nuanced understanding of the systems that we are working within that impacts, of course, the way and how effective folks learn math, English, social studies, and so forth. I never quote myself until today. So this is how I've been seeing this idea of racial literacy. I say that in teacher education, particularly, it calls for self-reflection and moral, political, and cultural decisions about how teachers can be catalysts for societal change. We are very powerful. Even in the wake of hyper-standardized testing, that foot being on our neck, there is so much power in being a teacher. The way that we can impact the lives of other people's children is amazing. And so for us, because I respect teachers, I hold us to a higher standard because of the lives that hang in the balance with us. So, we can be catalysts for societal change, first by learning about the systems of injustice, and then explicitly teaching our students what that they have learned or what we have learned. Because I'm an English teacher, I use dialogue, I use critical text, journaling, we use clay making, different modalities in my classroom. But this is all to develop critical thinking and conversation skills around the topics of racism, discrimination, and prejudice. Last, I argue that racial literacy asks that teachers like us take action against injustice in our school settings once we recognize it. So you can't hear something that is blatantly racist and see something that is blatantly racist and not interrupt it, right? That is what we're supposed to do. That's what I'm arguing. And by extension, take it into our personal lives. When we go home for Hanukkah, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Kwanzaa, and we hear those racist statements, I'm not saying get up on the soapbox, because no one will want to listen to you. But we have to be able to have the courage to say, that makes me uncomfortable. Tell me why you feel that way. And to talk about it. The hardest thing is to talk about it with your mother and your father. Aunts, cousins, people who nurtured you, to suddenly start challenging things that have just flowed in conversation very naturally. But what we don't do outside will not manifest in the classroom. So it is not a pedagogy, it is a way of living and being and thinking. Are y'all with me? So this is, we'll talk about Carol Dweck with, growth mindset. We're talking about growing the mind, we're talking about shifting the mind, we're talking about shifting the spirit, right? In the way that you may have been raised. So it's not something you're going to necessarily get in the PE session, right? So I want to show this quick video and have us think about the racial literacy of a toddler.
Where are they gone? You don't know. So who ate them all?
Someone come round and they just ate them all.
Someone come around and ate the cakes?
Yeah.
So someone broke into a home and ate Mr. Kipling's Angel Slices. Didn't take the TV, didn't take, some jewellery. They took these cakes.
And it was a black man.
So I'm going to let you sit with that for a minute because it's so hard, because you take it up with the cuteness, right, of the little girl who's no more than 2 or 3. And at this age, what has she already learned? So we could sit, we could do discourse analysis, we could unpack what the little girl said. We could also do a visual analysis and study her body movement, right? The embodiment of, I'm in trouble, oh sweat, I've been caught, how am I going to get out of this? And you see her thinking, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to say it was a black man who ate the cakes. And the mother's response, we could spend half an hour on that. And the only reason I had access to this is I got it from Twitter. It went viral within weeks. Within weeks, it had millions of viewers. And so someone posted it, likely the mother, thinking that it was funny, it was cute, it was something. So if we do not, and this is why I want to talk to my kindergarten teachers in the house. Where are the kindergarten, pre-kindergarten folks? Raise your hands proudly, please. Yes, we love you. And we thank you, because this is the opportunity we have to interrupt this type of racial, I would say, illiteracy, or we'll get this. And so, for some of you who may not be familiar with the story, it's 1955, it's Mississippi, it's sweltering hot, heat, and Emmett Till, a Chicagoan, goes to visit his family in rural Mississippi. So as the story goes, Emmett is hanging out with his boys, and as boys get together, they dare each other, and they dare Emmett to say something to a white woman. And so it's 1955 Mississippi. Not only do you not say anything to a white woman, you don't give eye contact. In fact, if there's a white person that's coming along the road, you have been taught that you step off of the road. I had that experience with my uncle, who's now 90, about 10 years ago. I nearly just exploded. And I had to remember that he had been a veteran in the segregated Air Force, that he had lived his entire life in the South. And so this kind of thinking, right, had been cultivated within him. And so the story has it that Emmett goes into a convenience store, and there is 21-year-old, Emmett is 14, about to be 15, and there's 21-year-old Carolyn Donham. What the story often leaves out is that Emmett has a lisp. And I just got my braces off 2 weeks ago. Can you see it, y'all? But when I had my braces, and for those of you who have braces, right, you know that sometimes it's a struggle to get certain words out. So Emmett has a lisp, and he could have been buying something at the store, but Carolyn heard the lisp and said that he whistled at her. And so a couple of days go by, and it is the middle of the night. And 3 white men show up at Uncle Moses' house, that's Emmett's uncle, drag him out of the bed, shoot him in the head, tie a fan around his neck, and throw him to the bottom of the Tallahatchie River. And part of the reason why we still talk about this story, and we compare Trayvon Martin and other young black men who have been slain by police, is the horror of the story is this, that the 3 men, Carolyn's husband, brother-in-law, and a friend, admitted to killing Emmett. They went to trial and they were acquitted. They gave their testimony in Look magazine. You can go online and you can look up the article. And I think what adds more insult to injury was the visual of Emmett's face that was on the cover of Jet magazine. At that time, there were about 2 major magazines in what we call the black community that we got our news, right? That there were positive representations of us, because we were either being ignored or we were being stereotyped. And so Ebony and Jet became, you know, if you were of a certain era, that was on your coffee table. And so Mamie Till decided that the world would see what happened to her son and what these men did to her son. And so he had an open casket and his face was put on the cover of Jet magazine. About 3 years ago, Carolyn Donham was being interviewed by a journalist who was writing her life story. And on her deathbed, she admitted that Emmett was innocent. And so this story has become emblematic, you know, for those of us who are on the other side of this, of the injustice that particularly blacks are constantly living with in this country. And these ideas about black boys, and black girls as well, Latino boys, Latino girls, carries over in the mindsets of teachers. And unless we have racial literacy, unless we have a historical literacy and understanding of history, we'll just repeat it. So here we are, 2019, South Carolina woman lies to cops about being assaulted by a black man. Susan Smith, who was released from prison about 3 months ago, I don't know if you remember the story of Susan Smith. She was in love with her boss, and he said, yes, Susan, I think you're kind of cool. I like you too, but I don't like children. She had 2 children. She murdered her children and blamed it on a black man. And so this trope, this use of the black male body, and there are other tropes for black females and Latinx and Latino women, is something that a 2 and a 3-year-old knew enough to blame the stealing and the eating of cakes. So what we have to understand is, and remember, we're 400 years into this project of dehumanization, 400 years into this project of inequality, that unless it is interrupted, unless racial literacy is built from a very young age, we will continue to have this. But as teachers, this is the bright spot. We can interrupt the status quo. I personally think that love is the answer. And I'll share with you later why. This is some of the work that I've done with my colleague, Perry Green, where we look at 5 Hollywood movies, the opening of 5 Hollywood education movies, and how Black and Latino boys in particular are represented. And then we look at a documentary of where 2 Black boys in Newark, New Jersey drop out of school and drop back in. And the difference in the way these tropes are played out in Hollywood films and in the everyday real life school is so stark and worlds apart. And so for each of us, we have to understand that there is a silence that's around racism. This is why I am excited about racial literacy, because racial literacy inherent is an action of speaking up, right? Of engaging and inviting other people to do the kind of self-work that needs to happen in order to change the society that we're in. And so one of my doctoral students, who calls Audre Lorde the Lord, says that our silence will not protect us. And so I want you to take a moment to think about, where does your silence live within you? Where are those moments that you hear something or you see something and your silence kicks in before the impulse to say something? What is it that you're most afraid of? These are the moments that we have to get in contact with ourselves. The idea of critical love, I want to bring in Bell Hooks, who says that there can be no love without justice until we live in a culture that not only respects, but also upholds the basic civil rights for children. Most children will not know love. Now, we don't want to mistake this, that we are the saviors. We don't want to mistake to say that I have to love the little child in my class because they may never know love. Parents are doing the best that they can. I don't think any parent will send a child to school and think, I really want Joshua to grow up to be a crackhead. I don't think so. Even in their struggles with poverty, with abuse of various kinds, it has always, I can say from my history of learning in the Black community, education has always been the way up. And so I don't know, I'm still wondering, I do know, actually, it's racism, how the idea or the language of Black families, Latino families, Asian, well, it's not really said about Asian families because they have been put in this group of model minorities, right? And that has a function as well. But this idea that Black families don't care about education, or Latino families who will cross the border and lose their lives to try to come here to have a different way of life. So we have to begin to interrupt those scripts that we have in our mind that these families don't care. And we have to have a more cultural nuance, right? Particularly if, let's say, you have Muslim students. You may never meet the mother. It may be cultural that the men interact with other men. A lot of times, folks send their children in the hopes that they will be cared for and respected and taken care of in schools. And oftentimes it is the opposite, right? And it might be the opposite here too, for some of our students in your class. So we have to go deep on this. Bell Hooks reminds us, critical humility, we all need it. I want to bring in the European Whiteness Collaborative on this wonderful article, if you get a chance to read it. It's Critical Humility in a much longer title. And these are brothers and sisters who recognize themselves as white. They identify as white. And I'm not going to read the quote. I'm going to let you sit with it for one moment. article is that they understand the power that they have in their white skin privilege, right? They recognize it. They recognize that their white skin privilege will allow them to say particular things. But when they speak, they must also hold intention that they cannot speak for communities. So you can advocate for co-conspiratorship, allyship, whatever you call it, but you can never speak for that community. So it's that dance that Gary Howard talks about, and we can't teach what we don't know. They recognize this. And so you have to be able to access, when you open your mouths, if you identify as white and you're speaking about a community, are you speaking on behalf of them in your mind? Are you speaking in support of them? So these are the moments that we have to do a little bit more deep excavation, and of course, critical reflection. I want to bring in another student who said that I am considering my role as a white woman who has relatively little exposure to people of color and is now standing in front of a classroom of ethnically and racially diverse students. So with the same sentiment that I have finished each of the assignments I've submitted for the end of this semester, I recognize that I have a lot of work to do. And don't we all? But particularly those of us who may seem to be as far away as possible in class, in race, in religion, in sexual orientation of our students, requires us, you, to do that deeper work consistently, every day. Historical literacy, I must respect the work of Khalil Gibran Muhammad, who was the former director of the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture in New York City and is now a professor at both Harvard and Radcliffe. If you've not read his book, The Condemnation of Blackness, and you want to understand precincts and police brutality and the way the political system works to disenfranchise folks, you want to read The Condemnation of Blackness. I want to give you a couple of seconds. I'm going to put an image up, but I want to bring Brother Du Bois in the room, who reminded us then that the problem of the 20th century is the problem of the color line. We are living that the problem of the 21st century is the problem of the color line. It is my hope that the problem of the 22nd century, when we'll all be gone, will not be the problem of the color line. And so I want you to take a moment to take this in and just see what you see. Have that conversation with yourself. This is from Titus Kafar's work. It was at the Smithsonian from 2017 to 2018, called Unseen, Our Past in a New Light. So let's just do a little bit of interaction here. What do you see? Let's just popcorn style, meaning we just pop out comments. No need to raise hands. What do you see? Nice and loud.
The aristocracy of whiteness and what fueled it and economized their aristocratic status.
Beautiful, brilliance. What else do we see? Come on, everyone. What do we see? There's no right answer. Yes. Vulnerability. Vulnerability, yes. What else are we seeing in this image? What are we seeing?
Arrogance.
Arrogance. Two more answers. What else are we seeing?
Jefferson and manipulating the language.
All right, I'm a visual learner. Thank you for that. I'm so concrete, believe me. What else do we see?
Humility.
Humility.
And the washing of the feet.
And the washing of the feet. I tell you, if we spent an hour or 2 hours on this, everyone will see something different. I saw that what might look like a leg, I imagined that to be her husband laying in bed and the curtain being pulled back of an interruption of their time together. That's what I saw. Certainly as Jefferson, we know that Jefferson, if you read Stamped from the Beginning, like Ibram Kendi, you understand that that could possibly be Sally Hemings, who he started having sex with at the age of 9, who miscarried multiple children, but also gave birth to children that Jefferson had a difficult time setting free. And so historical literacy is something that we all, that's that timeline that we have to have a deeper understanding. And it's not about just outing out all the evils of America. Every country has that, but it has to be both and. We cannot pretend that this doesn't exist, because that keeps us in a box of ignorance, quite frankly, and maintaining the status quo. Does that make sense, Will? Here's the timeline again. But historical literacy can also be within contemporary times. So I try to practice what I preach. When I'm Not Your Negro came out as a documentary, blew my head. The brilliance of James Baldwin. And if you've not seen the documentary, I invite you to see it. It is James Baldwin reckoning with the loss of his friends, Medgar, Malcolm, and Martin. Malcolm X, Martin Luther King, and Medgar Evers. And so, because I am a bit obsessed with James Baldwin, I invited his nephew, Trevor Baldwin, to Teachers College. We screened the film. Trevor was on a panel with Callie Waite, my colleague, who's a historian, and we engaged people in a conversation about what I'm Not Your Negro can teach us and has taught us. It is also in Ava DuVernay's work, whether it's 13th or When They See Us. This is particularly chilling for me because I am the same age of the Central Park Five. And I remember when this news broke. I remember the way that they were typecasted in the media. I remember Trump calling for the death penalty for 14 and 15-year-olds. And now these courageous men go all around the country talking about what it meant for them to spend so many years in prison, but they're looking to pay forward all of those lessons to try to prevent that from happening to other young boys. And so this is a way contemporarily that we can teach historical literacy. I never show videos of myself until today. Okay, y'all are getting me. This is a quick video. How are we doing on time, Dr. Keith?
We're good.
Oh, this is beautiful. That's like a gift. I want to share this one thing that when I did this video, this is a first take, and it's not that I'm this fabulous person on screen, but the reason I want to mention it was the first take, because this was the first time I publicly started talking about archaeology of the South. So when I talk about me learning as I'm going, this is an example of learning as I'm going. My name is Yolanda Sealy Ruiz. I'm an associate professor at Teachers College, Columbia University. I was born in the Bronx. My goal in life is to get those who want to be teachers and those who want to teach in so-called urban schools to get it right. My goal is to engage them into thinking about themselves and what their roles and responsibilities are in the classroom. What you believe about teaching has to come from what you believe about the children that you're supposed to teach and serve. And so if you don't do that work for yourself, how are you really going to be open to the stories and the lives of the students that you teach? When I think about my work, and specifically the work that I seek to do with those who are not yet teachers, so pre-service teachers, but I also work with in-service teachers, there's a concept that one of my doctoral students helped me to shape and define in my mind, and that's the archaeology of the self. And simply put, the archaeology of the self, like an archaeological dig, like a digging deep, like a peeling back of layers, is for the teachers to really think deeply about how these issues live in them. Issues of race, issues of class, issues of religious practices, how they look at those who practice religions other than their own, how they look at those who have sexual orientations other than their own. Because for me, I believe that in order to teach someone, in order to be open to someone, and that really is what teaching is, to be open to other people's stories, that you have to know your own story, that you have to be aware of who you are, what you bring to the classroom, how you're going to interact with the children that you are there to serve. And if you're not open with your story, if you do not think deeply about how these issues live in you, you just exact harm. You will traumatize. You will say racist things unless you really take time to understand, particularly if you're white, how might be prejudiced, against those who look like you and others. And so this kind of deep work, I believe, has to be done before we can even begin to have someone take up theoretical practices or to examine your pedagogy. I live in a space of hope because education is just that. And racism is, if I think about a tree, right, it's deeply embedded in the roots of that tree. And so this is the work that we try to fight against, whether it's through racial literacy or culture responsive education. It really is the racism that is deeply threaded through our society, and certain schools are not unique. I couldn't have said it better myself. Yeah, you're getting it. This is a great series called CRE Series. It's 9 shorts that look at parents and other professionals who teach in culturally responsive ways. Okay. And here is the pyramid again, the archaeology of the self, the deep excavation and exploration of beliefs and biases and ideas that shape how we engage the work. I want to flip through these really quickly because there's a video at the end that I want to share. And I want to show how in my diversity class, and Michelle is here, a student who was recently in my diversity class at Teachers College, who's doing amazing policy work in Washington, D.C. We have what's called an unfinal project, because as long as we are living, nothing is final. As Maxine Greene said at the age of 96, I am what I'm not yet. And so we are still becoming. And so multimodally, I invite my students to chart their racial literacy progress and to really think about the archaeology of the self. And so let me do a little bit of shuffling around. I was going to explain what the Unfinal Project is, but I'm going to go straight to this. And my students have allowed me to use their names. So this is Jillian, and an excerpt of Jillian's poem reads, "It was there in the corner of our eyes, fluttering like a feather we didn't want to see. In history class, we learned about the Civil War, how wrong slavery was. During Black History Month, we learned about civil rights, how wrong racism was. We put it in the past tense, or when we see it now, it's never us, always a minority of those white people. We've been taught that prejudice is wrong, that racial discrimination is wrong, judging people for their skin color is wrong. Meanwhile, we don't question why we rise, while others get left behind. We don't question why we're given second chances when others are given none. We don't question why our culture is the goal, while others are devalued." And so in this excerpt, Jillian reflects on the ways history was fed to her in school through the lens of her privilege as a white person. She recognizes her privilege of not digging deeper, not questioning the status quo because it did not interrupt her life. She discusses how teachers equated prejudice and discrimination and racism and the idea of white progress as a given. There's also artistic drawing that happens in the class. This is the work of Aiste and Malaika. And so taking up the concept of the archaeology of the self, Aiste decided that she would submit a self-sketch because, as she wrote in her reflection paper, my journey toward racial literacy is nowhere near complete, as represented by my piece of art. My art is a rough outline of who I am and provides a starting point to critique where my journey has started and where it still needs to go. Aiste understood that racial literacy is a skill that requires ongoing development, whereby she shared it is the responsibility of the individual to fill the gaps based off learning experiences and connections. Aiste decided to include her partner in the sketch to represent the fact that he learned from and attempted to teach others along her journey. Some of the words that outline her sketch include learning to fight, question, raising hell, demand more, and listening. Some words are indistinguishable to your eye, but it says much of it is in the same way that she is examining biases. Excuse me for that. Malaika chose to paint a self-portrait. She said that the Unfinal Project inspired her to paint again after 7 years. And so in reflection, she explained why she chose the medium and the colors. And I should add that during this time, one of my colleagues, who has now since retired, was literally using the N-word in her class. And our white students, Asian students, Latino students, they were really affected by it, but she continued to use it. And so Malika really had a difficult time that semester with all of the stuff that was happening. And so she said, when asked about my journey toward racial literacy, I mainly think about my relation to other people and teaching them racial literacy. While I know I'm not perfect, I still have many things to learn when it comes to being socially conscious and accepting of people. And this is something I actively work on. I'm gonna jump down. She said, for this picture, I painted a woman, me, offering a flower. The flower is purple and the background is yellow. I chose this medium because painting has been a creative outlet for me for a while, and I thought that this is the best way for me to express myself. The woman is offering the flower because flowers are a symbol of growth. Flowers are delicate and gentle. I think empathy is also delicate and gentle. The flower is purple because purple is the color of spirituality, and I do consider this to be a part of my spiritual growth. It is also the color of compassion and humanitarianism. The background is yellow because yellow is the color of positivity and happiness, which is what I felt while I was painting this. This is Aisha. Aisha recognizes herself and identifies as Indian American. And what I want to emphasize here is she had been an artist all her life. This was the first time she painted people of color. First time, specifically Black people. Because in her art classes, we were never really presented as being worthy of art subjects. And so this was a major move for Aisha in doing this. And so, of course, I am completely honored to be hanging out with Bell Hooks, Jacqueline Woodson, Gloria Ladson-Billings, and Uncle Jimmy. When we talk about this idea of archaeological digs, I want to go to Kyle, and I want to go to Jessica. I only have a couple of minutes left, and I may skip this, but I just want to say that Kyle, who lives in Maryland, this was the Eastern Shore of Maryland, he actually does archaeological digs. And so in the idea of archaeology of the self, he went back to do an archaeological dig in this particular space off the Eastern Shore of Maryland. And he said, many of my colleagues propose the many ways in which I can share these findings with my students and inspire them to do research of their own. One of my peers asked how I might do something similar in my own class with students. What kind of projects can they do about land ownership and history? They propose that I pair a text with this activity that is about learning the histories of native lands. I'm ashamed to say that I do know not many indigenous writers to pair this activity with. This has encouraged me to read more from diverse authors so that I do not continue to receive the whitewashed single story. Jessica's dig, this is powerful. This was done on ThingLink, and every little star you see, these are the strata of her different levels of life in 10-year periods, and when you click on a star, you get an experience that has helped her to understand her racial literacy. So actual archaeological digital digs were happening. Absolutely nice. This is my digital dig. Not digital, actually, this is my heart on a platter. Keisha mentioned Love from the Vortex. This is a book of poetry I have coming out in March, and this is my archaeological dig around love and intimacy. And so this idea of archaeology of the self, which is done certainly in the context of teaching, but should also be done in the context of our personal lives. And so I'll give you a moment. If you have your phone, if you want to play with something funky, this is a QR code. If you have the QR app on your phone, if you point it towards the center and you capture it, it will take you to, guess what? A pre-order form for Love from the Vortex. But what I will do if you're not able to capture it, I'll ask Dr. Keisha and Dr. Kendall Turner-Nash if I can send an email through them to send the email to you to offer you an educator's discount for the book. So that's I'm trying to live what I preach. And so as I close out, I want to say this idea of critical love is the answer for me to all of this. And I think that what we see now is often an absence of love. And Paulo Freire told us that it is impossible to teach without the courage to try 1,000 times before giving up. In short, it is impossible to teach without a forged, invented, and well thought out capacity to love. And he was one of the most famous abolitionist teachers that I've studied. I never quote myself twice until today. And I say that love for each other must be costly and fruitful. And so I want to end with this video, and actually what comes after this is a very brief quote from Dr. Martin Luther King to exemplify love.
What if Martin didn't stand up? What if Rosa didn't sit down?
they are the ones that we've been waiting for. And Martin Luther King told us that power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love. Let us be those who love with justice and equity in mind. Thank you for your time. Have a great weekend, everyone. Oh, questions? Do we have time? Oh, listen, I'm always trying to be respectful of people's time. I would love to, if you have time, if you have to leave, I understand that, but I would love to entertain any questions or thoughts that you may have. People are like, it's time to go. I get it. Anyway, perhaps I'll come back and we can continue the conversation. I hope you continue the conversations amongst yourselves. Have a blessed evening.